As with any piece of technology, JavaScript has a lot of jargon involved. Now, we're not going to be able to cover nearly all of the jargon that you would need to become an expert in JavaScript in this course, but I do want to give you an overview of a lot of the basics that you'll need to make some sense about what's happening here. So we'll start out with data types. JavaScript is aware of a lot of different types of data. So you have numbers, which are, everybody knows what a number is. Strings are sequences of words or characters. You have Booleans, which just means something that is either true or false. You also have collections of data types. So there are arrays, which are ordered lists of things, and objects, which are sometimes called dictionaries in other languages, but they're basically collections of things where each thing in the object has a name and then a value. It's just a group of names and values. JavaScript really likes objects. There are a lot of built-in objects, some of which are called window, which is the global object, one that's available anywhere when you're working in JavaScript in a web browser. Document, which is available to you also if you're working on the web as part of the document object model that we'll talk about later, and many more. Objects also have properties. So basically, any named something in an object is called a property. JavaScript also has a notion of variables. And to use the metaphor of JavaScript as a spoken language, it's a computer language, but it is a language. You could think of variables as JavaScript's nouns. They're sort of like proper nouns. You take a something, be it a number or a sentence or whatever, and you give it a name, and that name is a variable. There are also operators, which if we're keeping in the metaphor that we're going with of JavaScript as a spoken language, are like verbs. These are how you take things and do things to them. JavaScript has a whole bunch of these, and they have all kinds of funky symbols. Plus is used for addition, but it's also used to combine strings. The equal sign, a single equal sign, is used to assign variables, that is, to give a collection of data a name. Then you have double equal signs, which are used to test whether something is just like something else. And this exclamation point, followed by an equal sign, is to check if something is not equal to something else. And there are a whole bunch of other ones. JavaScript also has functions. Functions, if we're stretching this linguistic metaphor to the absolute breaking point, could be thought of as paragraphs. Functions are collections of other statements that can do something with some data. As it happens in JavaScript, they're also a data type of their own right. This is something that gets into a little bit of the, shall we say, propeller head area for people who are more enthusiastic about programming, but just know that it's a thing and that it's something you can research later if you get curious. Inside an object, you can have properties which are functions. When that happens, it's called a method. And we're going to see a lot of methods in this course. So when you hear me say method, just know that I'm talking about a function. It's something that does something. When we're talking about functions, there's also this notion of arguments. That's not to say that functions are fighting each other. This is just what it's called when you want to pass data into a function for processing, after which it's often returned. So it's sort of like the inbox and outbox of a function, if you think of a function as, say, a factory. Those elements that we're passing in for processing are called arguments. Next, we have control structures. This is how we do logical operations. That is to say, if we want to do something in some cases, but maybe not others, or we want to do something a certain number of times, anything like that is called a control structure. So for logical ones, you'll see a lot of if and else. And then also there's something called switch, which is another way of writing a whole bunch of if statements, so you don't have to just write a bunch of if statements. There's also this notion of loops. There are a couple of main types that you'll use in JavaScript. One is the for loop, which we'll see a lot, and a while loop. I'm not going to explain what those are at the moment, but just know that they are both ways to do something over and over again until such time as you need to stop. So that's a look at some of the jargon that you're going to be exposed to in this course. If you're interested in learning more about JavaScript, or if you just feel like you could use some more detail on any of these jargony topics, you can look at my course, Introducing the JavaScript Language, here on lynda.com.